the emotionally focused therapy interventions. And in this chapter, we'll always start from the same place. There's 3 tasks that we have as EFT therapists. And those tasks are immutable. That means we need to do those tasks. If we cannot do those tasks, we cannot make changes in clients' perceptions, clients' experiences, clients' behavior. And these tasks are always in my mind. Am I doing them? So the first task we covered last time is creating and maintaining therapeutic alliance. It's part of what we call common factors across many, many modalities, but it's much more important in EFT because we monitor the therapeutic alliance every single session. We might monitor for rupture, and if rupture occurs, we repair them as fast as we can. The rupture can occur because you may not be as competent in the cultural experience with the client. You may say something that feels disrespectful, or you may say something that doesn't align with the core values that clients have. And because of this, the report may be broken. And part of our task is constantly monitoring therapeutic alliance. And you can look at the first part of this this chapter where I discussed it in detail. The second part, and this is the one that I'm going to be discussing today, accessing, assembling, and reformulating emotions. And the reason this is important, because most clients who will come to us have very little or limited emotional experience. They may feel that they feel good or they feel bad, but they have difficulty formulating more nuanced emotions. Right? So also many emotions that they experience, they're not acknowledged. I may feel frustrated or something's happening with me, I'm agitated, but I cannot make sense of it. Right? Most of the clients won't be able to make sense of their emotions. They just know it doesn't feel good. They know that they're snappy with their partner. They know that it doesn't feel good and they can't change it. So as a therapist, we will learn how to access and engage with clients' emotional experiences. It's our task to distill clients' emotional experience to the place where they can make sense out of their experience. And they can go in an internal discussion and say, wow, I'm feeling angry right now. What's happening for me? And they can access their primary emotions as fear and sadness and shame and surprise and say, I feel so ashamed. And when I feel ashamed, I want to hide, but instead I become angry, frustrating, and I'm hurting my partner. Right? That's what we're going to help them to access those emotions. We're going to help them to make sense out of those emotions. And we're going to help them to facilitate for them the expression of new emotions and expanded emotions that they have not had in their view. And we will help them once we get to the emotional state where we can access those emotions, we will help them to change problematic patterns of engaging with their partners. And at the same time, we will promote change. That's the whole point. This task number 2 is probably the most difficult task because you need to be very tuned into your client's experience. And you need to make sense of what they are going through and how we can reframe their experience into something that makes sense for them. We may be able to understand their experience. We may be able to internally make sense of what's happening for them. But that's not enough. We need to have a clear, concise, clean language to let our clients to make sense of their emotions. And a lot of times when we do this, we're very tentative because we don't know if the statement we're going to make will connect with our clients or may not connect with our clients. So being tentative and offering the possibility of what they're experiencing is very important as we work with our clients. And for us, most of the work we do with clients, we work on the tentative side of our expression. And the reason is because EFT therapists is never considered themselves experts in clients' experiences. We may be experts in the process. We may be experts in understanding how attachment works, how love works, how relationship works, but we're not experts in clients' experiences. Therefore, when we conjecture into clients' experiences, when we guess what's happening with clients, we always need to do it tentatively, because we need to get the feedback from the clients to tell us if we guessed it correctly. And if you look at the work that Sue Johnson does, or any other EFT therapist, there are always going to be questions at the end of any statement you make. And simple way to see it is to wait until the sentence is finished and what's going to come behind it. And most of the time, it's a question: is that what it is? If that's how it is for you, is that what you're experiencing? Did I get it right? Did I express it correctly? Did what I said to you make sense to you? Are you able to say it in a way that makes sense to you if it doesn't work? So typically, when I start working with the clients and I think that I get what's happening for them, I think that I understand what's happening, I can probably make sense out of it, but I can never assume and I can never take it for granted that what I think is happening with client is correct. And that's one of the biggest mistakes that I see a lot of times, when a therapist has enough experience and seen enough clients that when they see other clients, they say, well, I've seen this before. I know what's happening. I can tell the clients what's happening, and they take a position of knowing. And we as a therapist don't want to take position of knowing without verifying it with our clients to make sure that we're accurate. So having that tentative approach to working with clients and coming back to them and letting them know that this is what I think. I'm just guessing here right now, based on what you told me and my experience with other people and my training and my ability to formulate emotional experiences. I'm guessing this is what's happening for you. But you're the expert of your experience and your emotions. So help me understand, is that what it is? And let the client tell you. The important part about this is that if you made it correctly and told the clients something that they agree with, then it's a success. But if you made a mistake, there's a experience of letting client to correct you, right? That's what you're looking for. You want to open up a possibility for the client to say, no, that's not how it is. That's not what I'm experiencing. This is not what's happening. I don't think that makes sense what you're saying. And we can't do this without being tentative in our conversation with the client. So if you conjectured or guessed and the client says, no, that's not how it's for me, this is a success for you, because the next question is, tell me how's it for you. Help me understand, what is it like to be in this place for you? Help me understand where I went wrong in guessing, right? Because it seems like you have a different view how it's happened, and that must be so important for you. Can you share it with me? Right. Now, the client has ability to share with us. We can reaffirm it. Now we learned something. We make notes in our notes really quickly so we know what happened. And then we can retell the client from attachment point of view what they just shared with you. Great. That's a great part. But what happens if we do make a correct statement and we guess emotions right, and we're able to tell them, I think what's happening with you, you get overwhelmed. When you can't connect with your partner, when you can't reach him because he shuts down, walks away, stop talking, when he says, I'm done with the conversation, that is so difficult for you. And that's when you get overwhelmed. And that's when the tears come. When I guess this and the client looks at me and says, that's exactly what's happening, that's only half of the statement. Because right now what they did, they agreed with you, but they do not own that narrative. They do not own that narrative because it's me who made the narrative. I'm the one who guessed. I'm the one who explained to them. The next step is to help clients to own this narrative. And the way you do the next step is by turning to the client and saying, wow, I can see how it's connected with you. But I wonder if you can share it with me in your own words. Can you share with me in your own words how difficult it is for you when your partner stops engaging, when he turns away, when he stops talking? Help me understand in your own words how you experience this. Only then, when a client is able to retell their stories in their own way, will they start owning their emotions and start formulating them in such a way where they can connect to their emotional experience when you're not there, right? The difficulty here for therapists is that when we make statements that are correct, it's very intoxicating, right? Because we feel we succeeded. Look how good we are. We just made a statement, the client accepted this. This is so wonderful, and they just going with this, right? And that's a time for us to say, wait. You need to stop talking. Wait, why am I talking? Why am I continuing talking? I need to let the client talk. Because I know what I did was great, right? But my client doesn't own that experience, and therefore I'm going to minimize their experience by continuing talking. So after you share with a client and they said, yeah, that's exactly what it is, don't move on to a different subject. Don't continue the conversation. This is a time to slow down, stay in the same place, and ask your client to tell you in their own words what happened to them, how they experience it. That's a big one. So that's what we're going to go today. We're going to do accessing and assembling and reformulating emotions. We're going to cover a small sliver of it because it's so big. And then we'll just slowly go through the chapter, and in next 2 weeks we'll meet again. So, but that we'll start here. Let's go into task number 3. We're not going to cover it today. It's going to be after we finish task 2. But the task 3 is restructuring key interactions. We already know that what clients do doesn't work. Because if it would work, they would be able to rebuild, restructure, connect, feel safe with each other, and go back and live their lives without us being there. But the problem with a negative cycle, which is present in interactions, or maladaptive responses, that in the moment when you're stressed and you want to connect with your partner, what you do actually makes it worse. Your action tendencies tend to hurt the ability for us to interact with our partner. And we will talk a little bit about action tendencies and what they mean a little bit later in this discussion. But it's maybe sufficient to say that strategy we use to connect with our partner that we think should work, because we've used that strategy when we were single, will fail terribly when you're in a relationship with another person. And typically there's only 2 strategies. One is to poke and ask the questions and push for answers, right? And the other strategy is, and that the first strategy is designed to maintain connection. Very good strategy when you're by yourself, doesn't work very good when you're with a partner. The second strategy is to stop the fight, walk away, stop the conversation, because you want to protect the relationship. Our clients protect the relationship by stopping the conversation, then the fight stops, then peace comes, and they feel that everything's going to be okay. But then nothing works. because by shutting down and stopping the conversation, your other partner gets very stressed because they cannot connect. And the more they get stressed, the more they poke at you and tell you to talk, and why don't you talk to me? And the more they poke at you and tell you to start talking, the more you shut down and you stop talking, you say, I'm done with this. And that creates a vicious cycle. So the problem is clients get stuck in that cycle, they can't exit it, and what they think that they can solve it by themselves. Most couples will fight until they're ready to leave each other, use the same strategies, and they're convinced that if only they can convince their partner that they're right and they need to adjust their behavior, then everything's going to work. Well, we know it doesn't work because with every cycle, it gets worse and worse. A lot of times you will hear expression, our relationship died one little cut at a time, one paper cut at a time. It didn't die because there was a big event that happened. It's a series of very small events over a long period of time that cause the distress in the relationship. So restructuring key interactions, we're going to use specific tools or interventions to track the pattern, reframe an effective pattern, right? Because we know how the pattern should work. We're going to connect to the unexpressed attached fears. And that's the biggest thing that we're going to work with in task 3. What are your fears about yourself? What are your fears about your partner? What are your fears about your relationship? This is existential fears and needs. And what do you need in the moment when you feel stressed and overwhelmed? And we're going to show them the exit. We're going to show them the exit from that cycle into a place where they can feel safe and connected with each other. So that's what's going to be next. Let's start with the task number 2. That's the important part. And we'll cover some of the key elements of task number 2. So I'm going to exit this and go to slide number 13, I think, because we covered the other ones we already covered before. So let me just come back here. Okay. So the task number 2 is interventions. Accessing, assembling, and reformulating emotions. And here's the 6 concepts that we're going to cover. Today, we're going to cover concept 1 through 4, because risk and catching bullets and daggers, that's all by itself. We need to spend the whole 1 hour probably just discussing this, 1 to 1.5 hours. So we're going to cover these 4 sections today. Exploring emotions with our clients, distinguishing core emotions from surface emotions, then looking at emotions as a process of recovery from the distress, right? This is a process, and not just a behavioral, it's a process that leads us to action. And then we're going to look at key issues in working with emotions. So these are 4 things we're going to try to cover. Maybe we'll go up to number 3 and then stop. We'll see how in depth we're going to go, but this is our plan right now. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with number 1, accessing, assembling, and reformulating emotions. And the part that we're going to cover is exploring emotions. Okay, most of the time when the clients come to us, they're not aware of what they're experiencing. Most of the time it's a dichotomy. Their thinking is good or bad. Their thinking is, I don't like what's happening there. You know, we have good time, but I don't like what's happening when we fight, right? Most of the emotional expression is very constricted. There's no depth to it, right? Therefore, the conversation, when they try to have conversation between each other, they cannot have the conversation which is safe for their partner because they always deal with good or bad. something I like, I don't like, something you're doing or not doing, right? But between good and bad, there's 98 other possibilities, right? Between doing or not doing something, there's 98 other possibilities, and those are not visible. They're outside of their experience. So part of the surface emotions, and we'll talk about a little bit later, those are the first emotions that come out when we get stressed. When something happens, and the stress, I mean the moment when you notice that something changed. One moment before that moment, you're feeling great with your partner. You're walking, holding hands. You may be sitting eating dinner. You may be just hugging and talking about what to do for the Valentine's, whatever it is. Everything's going well. The next moment, someone says something, the tone of voice, the way they look at you, rolling eyes, the way they react to something. Any of those things can create triggers, and the next moment you feel escalated. Something happens inside of you where you flip. And a lot of times what happens, people say, I don't like that Jack when something flips. I don't like Jack when he's upset. I like my Jack, who's loving and caring. But I don't like that other person. I don't know where this other person coming from. You'll hear this a lot in the conversation, right? Because that there's an inflection point where you, at one point you feel great, everything's okay, or one little change, which has to do with your own sensitivities, your own lived experiences as a client, your own triggers, right? And your partner accidentally brushes against your sensitivity, says something that doesn't feel safe, and then we flip to another person. And we flip because now we have to protect ourselves. So when we're exploring emotions, we want to connect and experience underlying emotions that may not be outside of the awareness in the moment. So the client can tell you, when this happened, I felt like crap. I felt like I want to run away from there. Right? And then we come back with the attachment framework, and we say, of course, in the moment, when you said so and so and so, and your partner looked at you and rolled their eyes, that was hurtful. In that moment, you didn't know what to do. You wanted to connect. You wanted to tell your partner how hurt you got. But the only thing that came out was anger, frustration. Is that what happened? Right? So we're looking at the underlying emotions. We want to name those emotions. We want to make them explicit. In fact, what we're doing is we're bringing their emotions into awareness. In EFT, we say whatever is implicit, that means something's inside of us, something that's implicit in conversation between the therapist and clients, something implicit that we all kind of assume as a given. We need to make it explicit, because most of the things that we feel that are implicit may not be correct, or your partner is not able to see implicit emotions or implicit experiences. They're not privy to them because they're hidden. But when we turn around and make them explicit, both partners can hear them, they can start understanding them, they start connecting to them. And most important thing is we take them and make them aware of what's happening there. Therefore, they're not hidden anymore. Because your partner can't help you with your emotions and with your stress if the emotions you experience is hidden. A good question that I ask in these moments with the clients, I say, you just shared with me how difficult it was for you in the moment when John raised his voice. Do you think he knows about that? Do you think he knows how difficult it is for you? About 50% of the time, the clients will say, I don't know. I don't know. I never told him. I just shut down, put it inside, and stopped talking. And in many cases, my face become very disconnecting. I don't do anything, and I don't express those emotions. Well, of course, we're not mind readers. We can't read our partner's emotions. We can guess into them. What's happening? I know that something's happening. I don't know what. And the biggest question the client go into, John, is everything okay? Right? Even though we see that something is not okay, but there's nothing that we can connect to. So the only question we can ask is everything's okay? But that may be a separate trigger by itself. And the separate trigger is, Joanne, can't you see that I'm upset? Well, reality is she didn't see it. She knows something happened, but everything is implicit, internal, and not expressed, so we can't really connect to this. So when we explore emotions, we want to know underlying emotions. We want to make clients be aware of those emotions. And we were going to distinguish between the surface emotions and the core emotions. The surface emotions are the ones that create a lot of problems. Think of the surface emotions as the big waves in the oceans, 20, 30 feet high waves in the ocean. Very hard to get away from, where they hurt you every single time they come out. You can't swim to shore because the waves are too big. Okay. So our goal is to bring them up, make them softer, and then convert them to core emotions and understand the pain behind that. The second thing, when we do assess and assemble and reformulate emotions.
What's up?
So Tori was saying.
Hey, guys, microphone off, please. Excuse me.
So there should have been something already scheduled.
She said they're switching the day, so they did have something scheduled, but it was sent to Skills Lab and.
Okay, let's try it again. All right, I'm coming back here. Give me a minute to get back to what I was saying. Okay, coming back. So we take our clients and we try to understand their emotions, underlying emotions to their stress. We're going to make the surface emotions explicit so we understand what they're dealing with. We want them to be able to recognize surface emotions. And then eventually we'll convert them to the softer emotions and then to the primary core emotions. Now, one of the biggest things that we need to understand with the clients for us to assemble emotion and reformulate emotions is to clarify the core fears. Most of the clients will not be able to connect to the core fears. They may feel those big emotions, anger, frustration, disappointment, resentment, contempt, right? But they're not connected to the core fears. And the core fears are typically connected to three places. One is fear about yourself in the relationship, right? Not outside the relationship, but what is my fear about myself in the relationship with adult romantic partner? The fear about my partner in the relationship, and the fear about our relationship in the relationship, right? The clarifying those core fears and helping client to make sense out of the core fears. And it may sound like this. When I get angry and so upset at John, I just want to run away. And then we spend time processing the core fears. And you say, what are your biggest fears about yourself in this moment? And the client may come back and say, my biggest fear is about myself, I'm not going to be visible. My partner won't be able to see how difficult it is for me. And I'm just going to melt away in this relationship. We process that. And then what's the biggest fear about your partner? The biggest fear about John is that he will never see how difficult it is for me. And we process that. And then what's your biggest fear about yourself, about the relationship? And the biggest fear about the relationship, that I'm going to stop loving my partner. We're going to stop loving each other and we're going to separate, or we're going to lose each other, or we're going to live our lives like roommates, right? All these fears. Again, we need to make those explicit. We need to announce those fears. We need to discuss with our clients. They need to be aware of those fears. So when they're on their own and they get triggered, the anger comes, resentment, frustration, disappointment, labeling, name calling, all of these things come. They need to be able to understand what I'm scared. I'm definitely scared. What's happening right now? Here's a person I love, but I see them as enemy. So that's going to be our job. That's going to be part of the reformulating emotions and understanding core fears. And finally, we're going to work on creating new meaning. If the first meaning in the surface emotions is my partner wants to hurt me, my partner doesn't care about me, when we finish reformulating them and create new meaning, it will sound like my partner is struggling too, and they don't know what to do and how to show up for me at this moment, where they get stuck in their own difficult place and cannot be there for me because they are dealing with their own demons. Or, excuse me, maybe create a new meaning by clients saying that I can see how it's difficult for my partner. In the moment when I get angry and frustrated, I cannot see that my partner is hurting too. I can only see my own hurt. But now when I hear my partner sharing those core fears, I feel empathy and love and care for my partner. So you can see how we can change the meaning of the initial emotions that are very difficult, very big, very hurtful, into emotions that are caring and loving and protective of your partner. Right? So that's what we're doing. We're assessing, assembling, and reformulating emotions. But to do this, we start with exploring our emotions. The next thing, we're going to explore core emotions. And core emotions, or primary emotions, there's few of them. Now, some of those emotions we're not going to deal too much with, because especially if we take joy, right? Joy is a great emotion, but people don't come to us because they feel joyful emotions in their experience, and they're not going to have couples therapy because we have too much joy. So that usually don't show up unless you succeed in connecting couple together, and you can say, wow, that was so joyful to see you both connecting and feeling great. But most of the time, what's going to show up is sadness, fear, shame, and surprise, right here, those four emotions right here. Now, the anger, that's a very special emotion. The anger can be a surface emotion, which is very dangerous, big, scary, right? That would be like a bonfire. You know, you make a bonfire, it's so big and so hot that you can get hurt, right? Or anger can be a nice and soft and warm fire that keeps you warm at night, right? It could be quite different. So that's why it kind of belongs in the primary emotions, but we don't use it that much unless we deal with validating. Of course, you get that anger because you want to connect with your partner. You don't know how to connect. And I get a feeling there's energy behind it, that's pushing you to find the way to be closer to your partner. Right, so we can use it in that way. But mainly we're going to deal with sadness, fear, shame, and surprise. These are 4 emotions that we're going to be working with and will allow us to navigate through the core part of the emotional experience. Right? So when we feel sad, we want to seek comfort and nurturance. Right? When I feel sad, can I get some comfort from my partner? And many times when we're in a negative cycle, when we're fighting, my partner is not available to nurture me and comfort me. When I feel fear, I want to fight, I want to flee, I want to seek protection. Right? When I feel shame, I want to disappear, to hide and retreat. When I feel surprise, I want to move toward, to explore in curiosity what's happening, right? But also surprise is a very difficult experience also if it's unexpected surprises, right? So I would say that in the order of the magnitude, the fear is one of the biggest ones that shows up in most of the clients. Then after fear, we deal with surprise, because that shows up and it hurts. Especially it shows up in infidelity or addiction or something unexpected, maybe violating the financial rules of the house, expending money that were allocated to something that we cannot use now. Many years ago, I had a client who had an opportunity to invest money into something to double his money, and he felt that this was a sure bet. And then he took $300,000 out of their checking account, invested, and lost all of it. He thought he's going to be, next day he's going to come in and say, look, to his wife, I just made money, we can finally buy the house. But he lost everything. So then comes shame. Shame is very complex and difficult emotion. It's rooted in so many difficult things that occur to us and throughout our life, maybe connected to our childhood, maybe connected to relationship with other people in our lives, maybe connected to the previous intimate relationship with other people. So shame is one of the most difficult emotions to navigate, and we tread very gently around shame. And finally, sadness. Sadness and grief are big emotions. And grief that we are not intimate anymore. Grief that we lost each other. Sadness that we can't be close to each other and can't connect. Sadness that we live like roommates, right? So all of these emotions will show up. And again, we explore those emotions in the task 2 of the EFT, using different interventions, and we become friends with those emotions. A lot of times your client will be fighting against those emotions, and typically they can say, I hate when I feel this anger. I hate when I go into this shame. I don't want to feel ashamed, right? But we also know, as long as you fight those emotions, as long as you do not have a relationship with your emotions, they will become stronger and stronger. So the goal is always for us to become owners of our emotions and make friends out of them, because every emotions will help you to do something. Emotions will call you for action. So if you feel angry, I want to embrace that emotion, bring it in and say, what's happening? What are you trying to tell me? What's going on? One moment I was feeling great, the next moment I feel so angry that I want to blame my partner. What are you trying to tell me? And most of the time, when you have that conversation with your emotions, you'll figure out what the core fears are. Because I'm so scared that she's not going to love me. I'm so scared that we're not going to be close to each other, right? So that's part of the assembling, reformulating emotions, making them explicit, understanding them, connecting with them, and actually making friends out of our emotions. Because even though it's a surface emotions and they're big and they're hurting, we still need to make friends with them. We can't reject them and push them away. We can't go into place saying, I'm going to skip you guys and go right away to the core emotions or softer emotions. Because when you fight with your partner, when the fight starts, you're always going to start with the surface emotions. And the only time you can exit your surface emotions and go into softer emotions, and then later on go into the core emotions, you can only do it if you make friends with your surface emotions. All right, let's take a look at some of the surface emotions. These are big emotions, cause a lot of hurt, tears, frustration, anger, physical uneasiness, bodily experience that doesn't feel good. A lot of times shame creates a lot of stomach issues. So frustrated, manipulated, irritated, gaslit and shut down, resentful, frozen, big emotions. Upset, disturbed, tense, controlled, abandoned, betrayed, angry, all of these are showing up. Now, what's interesting, that part of the work that the client needs to be able to do is to distill these emotions into one or two emotions, right? A lot of times, when we get escalated, we tend to select all of them and saying they're all applied to me. Let's put a check mark to every one of them, right? But then the problem with that is that your partner won't be able to sustain that. When he experienced or she experienced that she caused so many emotions and so much disturbance, and it's hurting your partner so much, they may become overwhelmed. So we definitely don't want to mark or connect and insist that I feel all of these emotions. So usually I work by selecting one or two or three emotions. If they select 5, it's okay. But then I'm going to come back and say, and out of those 5s, which 2 stand out the most? Help me understand. And the client will usually select 1 or 2 emotions. Now, once they select 1 or 2 emotions, the other party take a deep breath. Oh, okay, thank God I'm not doing that much damage to our relationship. So that's part of the being careful with your clients and assembling and reformulating emotions is not to let the emotions to run away to the point where it pushes your partner away from you because they feel so much shame that they cause so much disturbance. But most of the clients will not be able to say all these emotions. They won't be able to tell you. They may say, I feel frustrated, I feel manipulated, irritated, maybe upset, but that pretty much ends, maybe betrayed. But this gives them, by actually showing those emotions and trying to understand them, gives them a little bit of playroom where they can say, yeah, that's what I feel right now. I feel tense and I feel frustrated. Okay, great. We can take that. So the next step that I want to kind of cover, and this is emotions as a process, right? And we have 3 things in this process. The first thing is a perception. What is our perception? Most of the time, it's perceiving the warning signs, potential danger in a relationship, a threat that we didn't anticipate, right? In a way, when we get triggered, there's a cue. We call it environmental cue. It could be a smell. It could be what you see. It could be your partner's reaction. It could be a movie that you're watching that may create a stress by associating the movie with your own relationship and saying, we just went through this. That was pretty painful, right? And this is most of the time it occurs pre-consciously. It's not that it's on the surface. It occurs an assessment. Am I safe? Am I safe in my relationship? Is everything okay? Are we connected? Is my partner there for me? All of these things go through, and the answer may be no, not exactly. I'm not sure if we're connected. and then the brain takes over. We get the cue that something's wrong. Our limbic system turns on. And once the limbic system is on, the warning signs come out, and there's a potential danger. And the potential danger is a danger in our relationship. And the potential danger, everything kind of leads to one thing, of disconnecting from your partner. Attachment needs, and my attachment has a rupture in it. And that's why it's so scary. That's why it's so dangerous. Okay. The next step is reevaluating the situation, right? So you can explode, become angry, but then you take a little time and you start reevaluating, right? Your cognition turns on. You start trying to figure out what's happening. Or maybe it's not this way. Maybe it's not, maybe my partner is not as dangerous. Maybe she's hurting herself and she's not trying to hurt me, right? So meaning making from what happened is a very important part, and reassessing the situation. Maybe it's not that dangerous. If we're able to do meaning making and reassess and say it's not that dangerous fast enough, maybe we're not going to be able to explode. We don't need to explode and hurt our partner. But if we're not able to switch to meaning making, which is very difficult because once emotions come up and your limbic system is turned on, it's very difficult to go into the processing, cognitive processing. So it needs a little time. That's why we always, when we work with clients, we say there needs to be a slow process. When something happens with you, the first thing we need to do is to slow things down. Because we need to slow it down so we can go from perception to meaning making, reappraisal, reassessment of initial assessment, which may be wrong, and so we don't hurt our partner. But a lot of times we can't do it. So we do perception, it triggers, we get all the warning signs, we go into meaning making, and the meaning making becomes, she doesn't love me, or she doesn't care about me. And then we go to a third stage, and that's action tendency. And action tendency is what we're going to do once we recognize and have that meaning of the conversation. How are we going to protect ourselves? We're either going to go in self-protection and become reactive, become angry, start blaming our partner, or we can protect ourselves by reaching to our partner and saying, I'm really scared right now. Can you hold my hand? Right? So action tendency could be different. Most of the time when the clients show up for us, their action tendency is to fight back or shut down, become reactive, or withdraw, right? And that's our job, to reformulating the stimuli, help them to make meaning which is different. And one of the meaning we want to make is when you feel triggered, when you feel unbalanced, your partner is probably feeling the same. In a way, for me, when I become angry, I want to associate it that my anger and my frustration and disappointment and my struggle is okay, but my partner is struggling too. It's not a singular event where I only struggle and my partner rejoicing on the other end. But having this ability to switch and say, we're both struggling in this relationship right now. We're both having difficulty. And then the action tendency and the meaning making, instead of going to my partner wants to hurt me, the meaning making is we're fighting and we're hurting each other. Let's figure out how to get to a safe place. And finally, the action tendency is to reach out and say, I don't want to fight. I know you're hurting, I'm hurting. Can we stop? Can we slow things down? Can we figure out what to do? Because right now we're escalating and hurting each other, right? So that's where we're kind of reformulating. Because in the beginning, perception, meaning making, and action tendency usually leads to a fight and usually end up in a 1, 2, 3, 4 hour conversation between two partners. So the big one is key issues in working with emotions. Working with emotions, we need to be actively engaged as a therapist. And this is the biggest difference between emotionally focused therapist and every other therapist. We're actively engaged. I like to have my chair that has wheels. And the reason is I can slide closer to the couple. I can be in their space. Most of the time, my position with clients is within 6 inches of their knees. That's how close I get to clients. Now, a lot of times I will ask about this. I might say, do you mind if I move a little bit closer? But if the therapeutic alliance is strong and everybody feels safe, I'll move closer. If the client has some injuries from the past, they may tell you, no, that doesn't feel safe. Okay, I will stay back. But the goal is to move as closer as possible so you're in their space so you can help them to navigate through their emotions. We're directly engaged with clients' experience and the emotions they're experiencing. So we are accepting those emotions, reformulating, feeding back their emotions, reformulating them in attachment language, right? And we stay with them. We don't walk away. And because of this, it's really important that we have gone through our own work and make sure that emotions that may come up with the clients do not trigger us. And sometimes it happens. Sometimes it happens that what's happening with a client resembles what may be happening for you in your relationship, or maybe happened for you in the past in your relationship. And we may not be able to stay in their emotions. And what we do, we escape. And the way we escape is by moving on to a different subject. A client may say, I'm so angry when Aaron does not want to talk to me. And instead of leading into this anger and understanding what's happening, we say, yeah, we can see how you guys are not doing well together. So I wonder, Aaron, what's happening, right? In a way of walking away from the client and going to a different client, or do something that kind of moves to a different subject because we're not able to handle that conversation because we have our own emotional experience. That's why it's important. We need to clean our emotional difficulties. We need to have our own supervisors or our own therapists. So when we show up in front of our clients, when we get triggered, we can recover from it quickly and tend to our clients. So that's an important part. So the next thing is we're going to explore the emotions. In exploring the emotions, we're going to help our clients to put words to their emotional experience. I'm going back to the same thing, that clients have difficulty to have coherent narrative explaining their experience. There's nothing wrong with it. We've been there before. A lot of times, even though I do emotional focus therapy, if I go to my own therapy, I may get frustrated and not be able to coherently explain everything. That's normal, because when we get escalated, our cognition shuts down. We're not able to make sense out of things. We get overwhelmed. So it's our job to help the client to distill their emotions, to help the clients to make a clear narrative of understanding what's happening with them. And the part of it is to be very deliberate and help them to make sense. Now, remember, when we do reformulate things and feed them back to the client and provide them back to the client, we need to do it in the context of the client's experience, in the context of client's cultural background. Right? Because if we don't consider this, we may have a therapeutic alliance rupture, and we have to deal with repairing this rupture. Okay. So helping clients to assemble an emotion enables them to put words to emotional experience. So in this case, let's say a client comes and says, I'm pissed off. I'm pissed off. I don't understand why she's doing this or why she's doing this. I'm so pissed off, and that's the only word they have to say. We come along and say, of course, it makes sense. You care about your partner. You want to be close to her. And all this anger comes from the back of it. And you say, and you can't get close to her. That must be so difficult. And then everything tells you, I'm pissed off. I'm pissed off. And I can't connect with my client. Is that with my partner? Is that what's happening with you? So this is, we're starting to shape the emotions. We start to clarifying the emotions. We start to bring attachment language in, and slowly we continue until the client can say, I get pissed off because I'm so scared that I can't connect with Joyce. I'm so far away from her. I want to cry, but instead I become upset. Right? We help them to navigate through this, and we help them to make the language palpable. So when we try to pass that language to their partner, which we're going to learn later in intervention as a enactment, the partner will be able to react to this and help their partner. So working key issues with working with emotions is you need to learn how to become involved. You can't be at the arm's distance. It doesn't work. You pull yourself away from the client to 2, 3, 4 feet, sit away next to the wall while they're working there by themselves. You will not be able to make an impact, and you won't be able to have direct engagement with emotions. To the point when we work with clients using telehealth, when we start deepening emotions, I will move closer to the screen. I will move closer, and I will start talking to the screen so they can see how I physically move to them. And then when I zoom out to process the overall experience, I will stay a little bit back. But as things get a little bit more intense and more vulnerable, I'll move in again. Right? So we can modulate our presence in their spaces and help them to navigate through their emotional experience, because they become very vulnerable when they share their experience. So it's up to us to help them to stay safe. The exploration is a process. You don't rush through this process. You don't rush through involvement and exploration. That takes time. And that's why we want an hour and a half with our clients, so we can clearly explore their experience, make sense out of it, narrate it, ask them if it's okay, if that's how it feels for them, tell them to say it in their own words, and become owners of their own experience. And the final one is discovery of new emotions. For clients, it's quite a revelation to discover new emotions that they didn't consider before. Even the emotion of being surprised or feeling shame are new, and that never entered their consciousness, because the anger and surface emotions just overwritten everything. When they live in those emotions, it's hard to go to core emotions. But as we slow things down, take one little step at a time, and navigate through these reformulating options and assembling emotions, accessing those emotions, when the shame shows up and the client recognizes it, you can see the change in the room. So, wow, I didn't know I felt ashamed. I just felt all the time so angry and so frustrated. I couldn't even see that I feel so ashamed that I'm hurting my partner. And then you have better understanding. The client owns their new emotions. We can now process these new emotions, attend to their needs, pass that emotion to their partner, and the partner accepts their emotions and goes back to their partner and said, I'm right here for you. And then we have recovery and connection. So that's why it's so important. That's why it's so important to assess, assemble, and reformulating emotions. And I think I'm gonna stop here because this is a lot. The next time when we meet, I'm gonna go about the acronym called RISK. That's all by itself very important. Repetition, image, slow, soft, simple, specific, and client's words. That's what this RISK stands for. Each of them we're going to discuss in details and understand how to use it. RISK is a way of life for us as the couples therapists using EFT modality. It has two meanings. One is risk to go all through all of these interventions types, but also we always help clients to risk expressing new emotional experience. We ask them to risk and stay on the edge of learning, right? And we need to create the safety where they can take a risk, become vulnerable, and we're going to help them to be safe. And then the next thing we're going to go is to catching bullets, arrows, daggers, and knives. This happens when one partner becomes vulnerable, shares emotions, but the other partner doesn't accept them, doubles down, and tell him, you're always saying that. I don't trust you anymore. Who cares if you feel vulnerable today? What happened in the last 15 years? Where was your vulnerability at that time? Right. So part of the work that we have to do, we need to protect clients from arrows and daggers and knives. And when their partner shoots the bullet, we're going to be standing in front of the other partner and catch that bullet. We're not going to let that bullet hit our partner, hit the other partner. So that's an important part. So that's going to be probably by its own next time.